We have been very carefully and closely following the negotiations that are being done in COP24. And one of the challenges that we see is the inclusion of the human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples in the implementation guidelines. We have been talking a number of states to get the views on how to make sure that these rights, human rights, is included in the Paris rules books. We have been receiving feedback that it's quite sensitive for many parties to have it included in the Paris rule book, but we are trying our best to make sure that it is there, because for indigenous peoples we have been affected by climate change, and not just climate change but also the measures that is either for adaptation or for mitigations are also affecting indigenous peoples, and we want to make sure that the Paris rules book, the guidelines for the implementation of Paris Agreement that will be decided in Katowice, at least make sure that the rights of indigenous peoples, as well as women and the role of youth, is actually adequately addressed in the Paris rule books. Otherwise, there is no connection between what's written in the Paris Agreement preambles and what will be there in the implementation guidelines. So yeah, that's a challenge, but we'll still continue to follow the negotiation and try to influence the parties. We don't directly work at the regional level with the government, but we participate in different advocacy events where we try to lobby and advocate with the government. But in some countries, there is no, how to call that, engagement of indigenous peoples and the government. So AIPP as an organization tries to facilitate, like provide a space where government and indigenous peoples can come together. Just to give you an example, that AIPP has been doing a lot of work on climate change and RED+. So with the effort of AIPP and the UN RED program, we did a first ever dialogue between indigenous peoples and government in Bangladesh, in Vietnam, and also in Myanmar. And because of that dialogue, there is still a continuation of the collaboration between indigenous peoples and government. And like, for example, in Vietnam and Myanmar, indigenous peoples are given space in some of the bodies, the RED+ bodies at the national level. So meaning that because of that dialogue, there is still a continuation of the collaboration. So that's the kind of space we provide for indigenous peoples organizations. From the indigenous people's perspective, of course, there should be actions in the ground which indigenous peoples are already taking, but there has to be also support from the government to those indigenous peoples who are actually doing sustainable natural resource management. So there has to be an enabling environment both for indigenous peoples, and there should be more actions taken by the government. So I think, and also like I said earlier, all the actors has to commit, all actors has to take actions, and that's how we can collectively help the world to mitigate and adapt to climate change.